Hello, thanks for visiting my channel, LS Flashing and Tuning. The purpose of this video is to create an addendum to a video I created 2 days ago on General Motors marine fuel injection systems. When I went back and watched that video myself, I realized that I left out a very important part of the video, which was what are the practical applications of the information I was providing. And so what I wanted to do is come back and explain a little bit more about how that helps the average boat owner with his engine. So with the older system, as I was explaining, say a throttle body system, when you put the distributor in, you do what's called static timing, and that basically means you're mechanically timing this distributor so that the rotor points at the right location when the distributor's seated into the engine. And I covered that in one of my videos on the 4.3 Vortec, Mercury Vortec Series 1. I think it was video number 9. It was either video number 9D or 9E. I can't remember which one. But anyway, in that video I talked about dropping the distributor into the engine, and not only do you have to time it by having this rotor point to a certain location. In that video it's pointing to this little hole with a screen over it. So when it's fully seated in there, this distributor needed to point over here. This rotor tip needed to point right there. So let's see if I can get it just right. So right there. So when this distributor is down in that engine and the rotor is pointed to that hole right there, because the number one cylinder distributor cap tower lines up with that hole, the rotor is lined up with that tower, and the gear was engaged, and everything's fine. And you also have to interlock it with the oil pump on the bottom of the distributor. So you're basically setting the gross mechanical timing when you install the distributor, but then you have to come back and do fine adjustments to the rotation of the distributor with the timing light to get what's called the base timing. And you set the base timing with the timing tool in that video. I don't want to go into more detail on that because I've already covered it, but the bottom line is that you do set timing with the distributor, both static and then dynamic timing with a timing light, and you rotate the distributor till you get the base timing. Once the base timing is done and you remove the timing tool, if it's a carburetor, it just runs off the timing in this module. If it's a fuel injection system, it runs off the timing provided by the computer in the fuel injection system. But the base timing is set by how you rotate the distributor, and then you lock it down. That's your base timing. So if you have a distributor like that, then you do have to set timing by rotating the distributor, and you have to set it with a timing light to get the fine tuning down pat. This other system is different. So as I was saying in my previous video, this distributor does not rotate. The clamp is on flat, so it's designed so the distributor doesn't turn inside the clamp. The clamp's locked down in one hole. It's not slotted, so the clamp's stationary, distributor's stationary, everything's stationary. However, you do have to do one thing. When you put this distributor in, it has to be lined up perfectly. The engine has to be on top dead center on the number one cylinder compression stroke. The engine has to be on top dead center. And if you look very carefully, you'll see a little, let me see if I can get it to focus here. Focus right there. Come on. Okay, it won't focus too well. But there's a little arrow right there, and that arrow has an 8 beside it. I don't know if you can see the 8. I'm just going to get it angled, but so anyway, that arrow has an 8 on it. So if it's an 8-cylinder, when the distributor is fully seated at top dead center, and you drop this into the engine, this rotor should point to that arrow right there with an 8. If it's a V8, if it's a V6, there's another arrow over here, right there. I think you can see the 6 on this one. It's faint, but you can barely see it. So, yeah, there you go. So there's a 6 right there. So when it's a 6-cylinder, the rotor should point there when it's dropped in and seated in the engine at top dead center. So that basically means you still have to time, I won't say time, but you have to synchronize this distributor with top dead center so that when it drops in and is locked in place, that cam sensor is automatically synchronized with your crank sensor. And so once it's dropped in and tightened down, there's no adjustments. So there's no timing adjustments with the distributor. The only thing you have to do is, as the distributor is installed, is it's synchronized. Now there's other videos that explain. One in particular is called, the channel is called Schrodinger's Box. He's got 1 million views on a video on how to install this distributor, and it's a very good video. So I'd recommend you go watch that video. I'm not going to do it again since he did such a good job. But he talks about, there's a painted line on the distributor, it's right there. So when you get that painted line, it lines up with a dimple on the gear, and that you line those two, the painted line and the dimple line up before you drop it into the engine. As you drop it in, as you put the distributor down the engine, due to the gears are helical gears, the distributor rotates a little bit. So when you have that painted line and that dimple lined up, it's automatically turned the right amount so that as you drop it in, it lines up. So it's supposed to make it a lot easier to do. So because if you don't do that, it's kind of a trial and error. You put it in, oh, I missed it because it doesn't line up with the arrow. You got to pull it back out, rotate it back a little bit more, drop it in, it'll rotate. If you hit it the first time, great. If you don't, pull it back out and rotate it again. The whole time you got to also rotate the oil pump down in there so that this tip right here will lock into the oil pump. So you're really kind of coordinating two things at once, the alignment of the distributor and the alignment of the oil pump. But once you get it right and you drop it in on a V8, it should point to that arrow, or V6, which is over here. Now the reason this distributor is the same for a V8 and a V6, it doesn't matter, because the cam sensor is the same for V6 and V8. Now obviously the caps are different. You know, on a V6 you'll have a cap with 6 plug wire towers. On a V8 you'll have a cap with 8. But the bottom line is that the base distributor is the same for a V6 and a V8. And the way you can get away with having two different marks with the same all lined up by having this thing pointed to line is that the hole in the intake on a V6 is in a different location than it is on a V8. So that way, when you drop in on a V8, it's over here. I'm not making it up, but I'm just making an example. When you drop it in on a V8, it's over here. When you drop it on a V6, it's over here. That way, that's how they can get away with two different alignment marks, but having this all set the same down here. So I just want to make that clear that this distributor, once it's installed, timing is done. There's no adjustment. All the timing is done through this and that cam sensor, and there's absolutely no adjustments. On that distributor, like I just said, you set your static timing, then you adjust your dynamic time with a timing light. And from that point on, the module or the computer takes over the timing. But you are responsible for setting the initial timing on that distributor yourself. On this one, when the distributor is installed in the right location, timing is done. There's nothing to set. So that's the point I want to make clear, that you don't have any timing adjustments for this one, but you do with that one. That's the practical application of the information I shared in the previous video. So that's about it. I just want to make sure that was clear, and thanks for watching my videos.